Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Kochanowsky and I'm joined by Gitta Lubke, our science advisor. I'm Associate Director of Programs at PFIC Network. I kind of wear a lot of hats like Emily, which is pretty typical for the nonprofit sector. I help with our education and advocacy programs, but I also really focus a lot of my work on our research programming, which I'm going to be sharing more about with you all today. Let me grab. You just hit the green button to advance? Okay, awesome. All right, so during this session, I'm going to be giving some background about a couple of specific research program projects we've had, including one that we ended last year, IMPACT, which many of you may already know about, and what we're currently working on as a follow-on to that project. Then I'll bring Gitta over to share some background information about research in general, to provide context for some breakout discussion groups that we'll be going into towards the latter third of the session. Before we get started, I want to hit rewind for a moment and take us all back to our conference like this one in 2022 in Pittsburgh. It was a little bit smaller back then, but we had a lot of really meaningful discussion. Specifically, we asked patients and families in the room what challenges they were facing with clinical management, with navigating treatment decisions, just any challenges in general that they were facing. And what emerged really noticeably was the lack of clinical care guidelines for PFIC, leading to patients having difficulty knowing what the best next step is for their kiddos, and especially the lack of patient preferences being systematically incorporated in those decisions. So, for example, having evidence to be able to discern which option might be better for me based on my specific preferences or for my child or myself. And after those discussions, we had identified a specific kind of research called patient-centered SARE, which I'll tell you more about in a moment, that can generate evidence that can help for better informed healthcare decisions and maybe addressing some of these challenges that were shared during that meeting. All right, so what is patient-centered SARE? Let's start with the SARE piece. SARE stands for Comparative Clinical Effectiveness Research. Really, TLDR, it compares two or more treatments that are already used in practice to see which one works better. What makes SARE patient-centered is that it addresses questions about treatments that matter most to patients and the outcomes that are most important to them too, such as itch, quality of life, quality of sleep, and so on. Another important element of patient-centered SARE is the involvement of patients as equal partners in research. So not just as participants getting enrolled and providing data, but really specifically in designing the study and choosing the question and picking, how to reduce the participation burden for others joining the study, and then helping disseminate those results back to the community in a way that's easy to understand and will get into as many hands as possible to be as helpful as possible. So there is an institution called PCORI. They are the primary funder for this specific kind of research. It is a US government-sponsored nonprofit organization. As I mentioned, they fund those types of studies, and they also fund organizations like ours and academic institutions that are working to build the infrastructure to start to conduct these types of studies. PFIC Network received its first award from PCORI back in 2023, specifically not to do research yet, but to work towards it by establishing that infrastructure. And then we received a second round of funding, a similar type of funding, January of this year. A little bit about our first project. It was under the Eugene Washington Engagement Award umbrella. We entitled it Impact, or Identifying Research Targets by Merging Patient and Clinician Treatment Information. It lasted 2 years, from July 23 to July of last year. And during that time frame, we had educated patients, families, clinicians, and researchers about how to partner as equals in research. We did this through a virtual learning module curriculum. And then we got all of these folks together in focus groups and also leveraged surveys to gather input on what questions, concerns, and outcomes matter most to patients and their caregivers. And then we consolidated all this information into a roadmap that includes a list of all these questions and outcomes that we can use as targets for future patient-centered SARE studies. At the end of that project, we identified a few gaps that remained. First, there was no dedicated research infrastructure to design and carry out studies. And we also didn't yet have a prioritized feasible research agenda. We had a lot of great questions and outcomes that we knew mattered a lot to patients and families, but we needed to identify which matters most and also which could most realistically be done in a study given challenges around statistical power for working with a rare disease at smaller population size. And so we applied to PCORI again, got the second award with a goal to establish a consortium that would fill these remaining gaps. And so specifically from this year, January, until the end of 2027, we set out to form a steering committee, which we have successfully done, and it includes 6 patients and parents, 6 clinician researchers, and 2 nursing professionals. And this group will be tasked over the next 6 months with developing a governance charter for this consortium, so how it will operate, how it will make decisions, and how it will assemble research project teams to carry out studies. And it will define that feasible, prioritized agenda, specifically in next year. I just want to do a quick shout out to our project team. This is the group we assembled back in January that was involved in designing this project and as well as carrying out the activities. Dr. Jim Squires was unable to join us today, as well as Marianne, but if you're live online, hello. And of course, Emily and Gitta and myself. As I've shared, we have formed the steering committee, and now governance charter development is underway, which is very exciting. We had our first meeting to do so yesterday, and I think it went really well. And then next year, you'll be hearing more updates about us turning those impact targets into a feasible research agenda. And also a note, this is our consortium steering committee that was finalized as of last month. It's a lot of names, so I'm going to save time and maybe not read all of them, but they're wonderful people. All right, so for the purpose of the rest of this session, we want to talk with you all and hear specifically your feedback on what helps or gets in the way of participating in research studies. So later on, we will be having you all join small breakout groups, and we've assigned specific rooms, and I'll share more instructions later. We'll have facilitators in each of those rooms that will ask you a set of guided questions, and we will use your feedback, we'll summarize all of it, and use that to inform how we design future studies for the consortium. Before we do that, though, I'm going to invite Gitta up to share a little bit more background about research in general.
Yeah, so a little bit like very generally, clinical research aims at understanding and improving health conditions, and that can focus on disease detection, treatment, prevention. Now, SARE studies, as Melissa already said, SARE studies are a very specific type of research where 2 or more treatments are being compared. Well, basically to figure out what works best under which conditions, for who and for whom. The 2 examples here of potential SARE studies on PFIC, a combined vitamin formulation versus individual vitamins. And then you can look at palatability, adherence to taking the vitamins, vitamin levels, and aspects of quality of life. And this example also illustrates that patient-centered SARE studies are not limited to only patient-centered outcomes, but they can also include medical outcomes like vitamin levels, whatever you want. And then another example would be itch treatment, like itch treatment plus mental health support, because like very generally, itch might be related to anxiety, for instance, and then mental health support might be helpful in addition to itch treatment. And so in a study like that, you would want to figure out whether that is actually the case or not. And then outcomes in such a study could include perceived or actual itch, sleep quality, aspects of quality of life, aspects of mental health. Okay, so when you set up a study, you go through different steps, right? So first of all, you come up with a question, and in patient-centered care, that in that phase, patients and clinicians, researchers get together and determine that together. And then comes the next tick mark here. That's designing and checking, coming up with a research design and checking feasibility. That's probably at some point you want to involve somebody who knows a little bit about stats there to check for the feasibility. As you know, when there's like a big difference in treatments, then you don't need a lot of people to show that, right, in a study. But if the treatment, if it's the difference is really small, well, then you need a large number of people in a rare disease, you know, that might be an issue. So you need to definitely look at design and feasibility. Once you've done that, the next step is IRB approval. You know, IRB stands for Institutional Review Board, any studies that involve human beings need IRB approval. That's an independent panel that looks at your study proposal and checks whether participants are sufficiently protected in that protocol. And that's obviously rather important. And I have another slide on that with a little bit more information because it directly feeds into also what we are going to want to achieve in the breakout sessions. And then once you have IRB approval, then, write it up really nicely, your proposal. If the idea is good and with a little luck, you might get funded, and then you collect and analyze the data and share that with the community. Okay, IRB approval. So IRB is an independent committee that looks at reviews and eventually approves every study before it can start. PFIC Network works with an independent review panel that serves like nonprofit organizations, and they have been amazing. So for instance, also, the participation in the breakout sessions, you need to consent to them because it's part officially of the Consortium project, which is a study. And then you need, since we are collecting data, we are basically writing up what you're going to say. And so you will, everybody will have to consent to that. So the reason for the necessity of IRB approval is that risks in a study are minimized, that benefits are fair, and that the consent to participate is genuine. And in the breakout sessions, we are also going to talk a little bit about consent. You know, consent is a legal document. So yeah, legal language, very often hard to understand. And we are also kind of like want to figure out a little bit how to make that more understandable to participants so that this consent is in fact genuine. So IRB is based on the Belmont report, and like in the history of medical sciences, there are numerous hideous examples where patients or participants were not protected, where there were severe risks in terms of health outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. So to put an end to such practices, the Belmont report was put out in 79, and there are three main principles of IRB is respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. Apart from IRB, and that is really like a separate thing, is HIPAA, and that's a law that protects your healthcare information. Basically protects privacy of study participants' health information and personal information. Okay, so now back to the scope of the conducting research, and especially SARE studies, right? When you want to compare treatments, there are like two main study types that you can use to compare treatments. The first would be an observational study. So here, patients and the doctors decide on what treatment is appropriate, and the patient receives that treatment. Researchers, the only thing that researchers are doing in the study is basically observe the outcomes, right, of people that use different treatments. Now, while this is definitely worthwhile study design, there's a major drawback, and that drawback is that if it can just happen to be that older people receive treatment A, and the younger people, it's more likely that they get treatment B. So now when you analyze results and you see, oh, treatment A seems to work a lot better, you cannot really know whether that's due to the treatment or whether that's due to those people being older, right? So there's this confounding because the choice of treatment was individual, right? So older people might have rather chosen treatment A, and younger people were more likely to choose treatment B. Now, randomized controlled trials are basically a study design that solves to address that problem, right? So instead of leaving the choice to the patients and the doctors, patients are being assigned, or study participants are being assigned to either getting treatment A or treatment B or C or whatever if you have multiple treatments. Now here, and that is done by a coin flip, computerized coin flip, So now, just imagine, if I have, if I start flipping a coin and one patient goes here, the other patient goes there, then also age will get more or less equally distributed over the two groups, right? And all other characteristics as well, like gender, whatever you want, right? So now, when you compare the groups on the study outcomes, and treatment A shows up to be the more effective treatment, then it's very unlikely due to all kinds of other things, but it's much more likely to actually, because that's the only thing that the groups really differ on is the assigned treatment, right? So that is, and I'm mentioning this because it's, again, it feeds into the breakout session, because patients or study participants might be more comfortable with an observational design, because then, the choice of treatment is between them and the doctors, right? However, in an observational study, again, the type of conclusions that you can draw are much more limited compared to a randomized control trial, right? So these are things, that's why we decided to kind of like put this background information together. To be a bit more informed when we go into the breakout sessions. The research roundtable here, the consortium will design studies that evaluate different PFIC treatments. And the goal for today is to discuss what enables or prevents PFIC patients from participating in these studies. The second thing that we also want to know get your input for is the consent, right? As I said, it's a legal document, a bunch of legal language. In the impact study, patients have told us, like, yeah, I'm just putting my signature here, but I don't really understand all of this pages, And so maybe also, like, in the breakout sessions, talk a little bit about that, how we can make that more accessible so that participants are more comfortable signing informed consents. All right, so I think now it's the time that we're going to break up.